Evelyn. Gender, female. Race, human. Physique, 23, about to exceed the limits of humans. Strength, 24, comparable to a small demon in the refining stage. Charm, 23, small beauty level. Uterine health, 23, not bad. Special skills, fighting arts, beginner. Transfiguration, beginner. Gynecology sage, pediatrics Dana, beast god's order, can be used 3/3 times. Evelyn looks at the egg in the room again, still not in a state to hatch out. Evelyn said faintly, "Next quest." System, okay. As soon as she opened her eyes, a strong odor of sweat swept into her nostrils. Evelyn frowned as she surveyed her surroundings. This was a multi-person dormitory with 4 bunk beds in one room. Each of the single beds was covered with bedding, so it was obviously an 8-person dormitory, and there was no one else in the room for the time being. Each bed had their respective name class written on the side. What kind of school is this? The conditions are so poor. Not to say the number of people, you at least get a bed under the table. These roommates are also, one by one, don't know how to take a shower. The dormitory smells so big. Evelyn buried her head under the blanket and decided to accept the memory first. 2 minutes passed. Okay, there is nothing in the memory, because the original owner had traveled across. Just opened her eyes and saw 7 handsome men with mermaid lines appearing in front of her, and in a moment of too much excitement, she just died. Evelyn, that's all there is to it. You won't enjoy the blessings you have. She's different. After working so hard on so many quests, sharing a room with so many handsome guys is something she deserves. However, this handsome guy's sweaty odor was also unpleasant. The door was kicked open with a clang. A man with fiery red hair, deep features, and quite a bit of a mixed-race look walked in. What's that smell? He covered his nose in disgust. Evelyn, don't you know to turn on the air purification? Evelyn poked her head out from under the covers and saw him tap on the wall a few times, and the whole room shone with a blue light, and then the smell immediately disappeared. Yo, this was still the age of high technology. Why are you sleeping under the covers in broad daylight? Not comfortable. Daniel glanced over with some disgust. Evelyn nodded twice. TCH, that's weak. Daniel lifted both arms, and the entire t-shirt was removed from over his head, revealing the defined muscle lines hidden beneath the crown of his shirt. Evelyn looked away, her palms sweating a little. It was as if she could feel the hardness and elasticity of those muscles. He didn't stop moving, then proceeded to remove the bottom half of his sweatpants. Evelyn's eyes went wide. Why was this guy just stripping naked? Daniel turned his head sideways and spoke conspiratorially. Seen enough? Evelyn gulped, not knowing how to respond. He flung his bird and walked up to Evelyn and jutted forward twice. You'll never be this size in your little body's life, so be jealous. Evelyn hastily grabbed something with her hand and threw it. Shame on you. The pillow landed lightly on the floor. Daniel raised an eyebrow and smiled, turning around and entering the bathroom. What was she jealous of? Did she, a female, need that thing? No. Why was he like that around girls? Evelyn narrowed her eyes at the thought of some possibility. Hands ducked under the covers and felt around. The boobs were still there, and there wasn't an extra thing underneath. So why was the original owner staying in the boys' dormitory? The next to return were 2 brothers, William and Robert. Both brothers had light blonde hair, the older brother with a pair of gold-rimmed glasses and the younger brother with a scar between his eyebrows. William glanced at her and said calmly, You didn't go to freshman training today. The instructor deducted your credits and told me to tell you that if you don't go this afternoon, you can go to the school office to apply for a withdrawal. Just not attending freshman training. This is to the point of withdrawing from school. It's really strict. Evelyn didn't think much about it. Her thoughts diverged elsewhere. The tricky part now was her situation. These men obviously didn't know she was a girl. She was now like the white rabbit in the wolf's den. Although people probably wouldn't do anything to her even if they knew she was a female, but what's the saying? Don't test human nature. Evelyn unconsciously wrapped the covers around herself a little tighter. Daniel came out of the bathroom rubbing his hair, still not dressed. Robert frowned and spat. Gross. Daniel immediately threw the towel in his hand. Who are you calling disgusting? Robert was undaunted. Says you. Daniel sneered and raised his fists with flames and charged. Robert saw the move and a golden shield rose in front of him, and the 2 men went straight to work in the dormitory. The force was heavy on both sides, and in no time the walls, beds, and tables were burned, smashed, and slashed with several holes from their actions. Seeing that she was about to get an unmitigated disaster, Evelyn rushed out of bed and dodged the metal flying daggers that Robert had gotten out of her. William was still standing, looking at the book in his hand. Evelyn was dumbfounded. This mysterious ability and this destructive power, a normal human? The next second her insides were on fire. Did she have such abilities? Warning: 2,000 credits each for destroying public property in Dorm 403. The radio blared. What the hell are credits? No matter what moves, it's a deduction. Evelyn was in tears. She hadn't done anything. Even more speechless than her were the men who had just returned to the dormitory. At least she was still there. The other men had just returned to the dormitory when they received the notification of deduction of credits. A few of the men were staring at Daniel and Robert with bad looks on their faces. Those two hadn't stopped yet, and you were fighting with a cluster of flames, and I with a metal flying dagger. A black-haired teenager who came in after them held his arms and watched the show, his mouth dissatisfied. A semester is only so many credits. This is good, directly negative. Were credits that important? They sounded similar to the credits she used to get for college. So would this affect graduation? Scanning around the room, the one with a more stable personality that she knew better was William. Evelyn leaned in close with a small voice and asked him, "What's the credit?" Before he could answer, Samuel, the dark-haired teenager, exclaimed exaggeratedly, "No way. What nook and cranny of a planet are you from? Don't even know what credits are? You have to buy everything you eat at school with credits, and it's only 1,000 per person per month per semester." Is his hearing all that good? She had purposely lowered her voice. Listening to his explanation, Evelyn understood. What credits? Isn't that money? Meaning she had just come to this world and hadn't done anything yet, and she was currently in debt. Those two had colors on their faces and bodies, and they hadn't stopped, just in case they continued to destroy public property for another fine. Evelyn dryly pulled at Robert's swinging hand. "You guys stop fighting." Robert was about to shoot out the flying dagger, which knew that someone would suddenly pull him. For a moment of inertia did not stop. Evelyn also, because of him, the whole person did not stabilize, followed the flying dagger along with the flying out. The whole person fell into Daniel's arms steadily. He held her and turned around in a hurry, avoiding the metal flying knife. Robert gave him and Evelyn a gloomy look. "I'll let you off the hook for today." Daniel hugged the soft body in his arms. Unconsciously, his heartbeat missed a beat and didn't bother to answer. Evelyn was busy standing carefully. "I'm sorry." Daniel looked down at her. The expression of the person who was only up to his chest height was serious, mixed with a hint of apprehension, and her feathery eyelashes trembled lightly. "It made you want to touch her face. It must feel so good in your hands." Thinking that, he did so, rubbing his large hand up Evelyn's right cheek, and sure enough, it was as smooth and tender as expected. Having seen his force, Evelyn didn't dare to refuse, fearing that she would be the next to suffer. She felt the force resting on her face getting heavier and heavier. Still, she didn't hold back and said, "After hitting him, you can't hit me, oh." The words fell, and the air was silent for a moment. The next second the crowd burst out laughing. Even Robert, who had just gone through a hard battle, couldn't hold back, the corners of his mouth lifting slightly. Where did this come from, Crouching Dragon Phoenix? Daniel rubbed Evelyn's face heavily twice and let her go. "Don't worry, no hitting you." Evelyn touched up her somewhat sore cheeks and muttered twice in a low voice, "The bed is broken. How can I sleep at night?" Daniel rubbed the top of her hair and messed it up. "Someone's coming to fix it. Let's go, buy you lunch." Evelyn just needed to familiarize herself with the current situation, so she didn't refuse and followed him out of the dorm. After all, the person she knew best now seemed to be Daniel, and she had seen his bird anyways, so she was at least a friend. Daniel wrapped his arms around her neck and leaned his entire body over Evelyn. The pressure slowed her walking. He grimaced and stood upright. "What planet are you from? Born so weak. How did you get into the Federation Military Academy if you're so weak?" The entire campus was very large, the kind that couldn't be seen at a glance. A few students could be seen scattered. All of them were close to 2 meters tall, and only she, alone, was stuck at 1.6 meters. No wonder Daniel said she was weak. But girls were naturally shorter than boys, so it was normal, right? Then she sharply realized something. Her head looked around. How come there was not a single woman? Could it be that there are only men in this military school? So the original owner before crossing over had a dream of becoming an officer, incognito female, disguised as a man into the military school? It's not impossible when you think about it that way. Otherwise, she can't explain why a girl has to live in a dormitory with a bunch of guys. Evelyn didn't answer his previous question and spoke tentatively. Do you have a favorite girl? Daniel was stunned and rolled his eyes. I don't like those women with eyes on top of their heads. What? Do you have your eye on any noble girl? Evelyn hadn't figured out what to say when he spat at himself again. It's a pity that you have such a small body. I'm afraid that no noble woman will be able to look at you in this life. You can't lift your shoulder or carry your hand. What's the point of choosing you? Evelyn had a guess in her mind. I have charisma, Daniel snorted. Che, you can't pass the screening of the guards alone. No matter how charismatic you are, you can't get in touch with women, let alone noble women. Just die. Honestly live with your right hand for the rest of your life. Evelyn was undeterred and asked again, what is the process of screening the guards? You don't even know this? Ordinary women will be arranged for mates by the Federation when they reach the age. Most of them are noble sons and daughters. When the noble women reach their 18th birthday, a ceremony will be held to screen the guards. Nominally, it's to select a team of guards to protect the noble women. In fact, these people are the reserve army for the future partners of the noble women. When the daughters reach the age of 20, in addition to choosing their mates from the nobility, they will also choose two from the guards. Don't even think about it. This is the only chance for a commoner to have a partner in their lifetime. The competition is fierce. I'm afraid you won't even be able to carry the first hurdle if you go. Evelyn hid the shock in her heart. Then, what about the civilians who don't have mates? Die alone. Daniel nodded naturally. Yes. After accumulating a certain amount of credits, you can also apply to raise a child with your own genes from inside an artificial womb. This world is simply more excessive than the Orc continent. The Orc continent was the one where females were scarce in the first place, so a female could choose multiple males. Listening to that meaning from Daniel, this world was even tougher than the Orc continent, and females were even more scarce. By the time they got here, other than from the internet, the average person would never see a female in their entire life. She was numb. The current situation was even more dangerous than she had expected. A group of men who had never seen a woman before would find out that she was a female. Then, she didn't dare to think about it further. Where do the noble women live? Daniel frowned. Where the hell did you come from? How do you not even know common sense? Noble women with purification abilities live in the noble women's camp, and women without special abilities just wait for the Federation to arrange a mate. What is purification ability? Daniel explained it to her while being disgusted. Evelyn figured it all out. This world was an interstellar age with highly advanced technology. As humans researched genetics more and more, generations had passed, and now all that remained were genetically enhanced humans who possessed all sorts of different psychic abilities. However, during the process of genetic enhancement, women were gradually annihilated because they were weak. Fortunately, the federal government discovered it in time and took protective measures, so women didn't become completely extinct, but the balance of the male-to-female ratio was gone. The men are physically strong and have a high level of force. But corresponding to that, this world is highly developed in technology, so radiation erodes every planet. Once the radiation value reaches 90 or more, the whole person will become a monster. That's why the profession of purifier also appeared. This kind of ability, only women can be awakened, but in the flood of time, women are getting rarer and rarer, and there is still a large portion of women who have not awakened the purification ability. Therefore, the part of women who awakened the purification ability were called noble women. They have very high rights. According to Daniel, very few men in this world live to a ripe old age because they will be eroded by radiation and turn into monsters before they reach old age. It's not true that noble ladies have the ability to purify, but there are too many men in this world who are eagerly waiting to be purified to wait to save enough credits to do so. This kind of monster, also called the mutant species. The Federation's army's main job every year is to purge every planet of mutant species. Due to the radiation, not only human beings will turn into monsters, but also animals and plants. The rice and vegetables Evelyn eats now are plants that have been exposed to radiation. It tastes like chewing wax. Daniel was used to it and didn't show any dislike. As if he could see her hard-to-swallow expression, Daniel waved his hand and brought her rice to himself. If you can't eat, don't eat. You drink the nutritional fluid. He tossed over a thin strip of what looked like a cat strip. Evelyn took it and looked at it. It had 2 cherries drawn on it. Daniel ate the rest of her meal from the plate in front of him without changing his face. Food is precious, and since we're the future of the Alliance, the meals in the cafeteria are purged of radiation and kept at about 30 or 40, which is good enough. Evelyn nodded without retorting. Well, the nutrient solution was cherry-flavored. Watching her take the nutrient solution in one small mouth, her cheeks bulging and sucking, Daniel thought of something abruptly, and the tips of his ears peaked red. You're going to training this afternoon, right? Uh-huh. Let's go. Hooking up again. Daniel wrapped his arms around her and weighed her thin arms. You really need to eat more before you're too skinny, too. Evelyn pulled away from the two of them slightly, pondering how to break the ice. If she continued to stay here, sooner or later someone would find out she was a woman. Paper couldn't hold fire, and genetically modified men had all 5 senses. Not to mention the distant ones. Let's just say that she wouldn't be able to hide it when she got her period. I don't know what method the original owner used to disguise the fact that she was a woman in the Federation. Since she did that, she definitely had her intentions. If she rashly followed the normal process of reporting that she was a woman, not to mention the other troubles that might be brought about. What if the Federation mandatorily paired her up at that time? It was so hard for her to start this world without having to have a child only with the target object. If this was arranged, wouldn't it be the same as before? And the system arranged can still be negotiated, but the federal arrangement cannot be negotiated. If she didn't want to, she could be knocked out and sent over. After all, I heard Daniel say that the nobles in this world still have a lot of power. The situation of noble women is slightly better, but only a little bit better. Full 20 still have to be paired, but have their own choice of space. Evelyn thought that it would be good to go to the noblewoman camp, but unfortunately, she didn't have the ability to purify, so she couldn't go there. She scratched her hair twice in dismay at the thought. What are you doing? Worried about freshman training, huh? Evelyn nodded with downcast eyes. The only thing to do for now was to take one step at a time. The two soon reached the playground, where a number of other students from the same class had already sporadically arrived. When the time came, the coach arrived in a dark green military uniform with Martin boots. He had a shaved-inch head and impatience written all over his face, especially when he saw Evelyn. Wasn't the military academy afraid he'd die if they recruited such a weakling? There were a couple of late arrivals. Andrew glanced at the time on the optical brain in his hand. You guys are late. Those few students were busy bowing and apologizing. Sorry. We won't dare next time. Andrew tipped his tongue against his cheeks. When you go to the battlefield, you guys go and tell the mutant species that you won't dare next time, so that it will let you go. Hearing this, the other students laughed lowly. The few students who were late were red in the face at his dislike. Andrew swept over everyone. You're all in the same class. Guilty streak. All of you. Carry 1,000 pounds for 10 kilometers. Evelyn's jaw dropped. 1,000 pounds of weight bearing. Is that human? Andrew vainly tapped twice on his light brain, and a square black backpack appeared in front of each person. Everyone grunted as they carried it on their backs, and Evelyn gritted her teeth. This body was at least a native of this world, so it should be fine. Evelyn crouched down, slipped her arms over the shoulder straps, and with a single push, the bag didn't budge. Her entire body was instead pulled by the force and laid down on the book bag, and her 2 legs even unconsciously buckled and moved twice. Ha ha ha. Who is that guy? How come 1,000 pounds can't be carried? No way. Too funny, just like a turtle. How did this rookie get into our school? Through the back door, right? Evelyn's face turned red. Daniel beside her, looking at her like that, wanted to laugh but stifled it hard. Reporting to the instructor, she's my roommate. She's a bit unwell these past 2 days. I'll carry this 1,000 pounds for her. Andrew narrowed his eyes. Did I tell you to talk? You can carry it right, at 1,000 pounds. Turning his head, he made a few false taps on the light brain and stunk at Evelyn. Reduce the weight. Try again. Evelyn nodded and gave a push, The book bag still didn't move. Andrew frowned. 800 pounds doesn't work? He gave a few false nods again. 500 pounds. Doesn't work. 300 pounds. Nope. 100 pounds. Barely able to carry it this time. But it lasted a few seconds before Evelyn slumped to the ground, clearly unable to run with the weight. Andrew pursed his lips. 100 pounds was already the minimum weight-bearing standard. He frowned and canceled. All right, you don't need to carry weight either, just run. Weak like this, it's awful to look at. Evelyn snapped and followed the large group, running on the playground. Samuel smiled and followed over. You're really good. Even the toughest instructor Pei is impressed with you. Evelyn, you didn't have to come over specifically to make a sarcastic remark. Even though she had tried her best to keep up the pace, she still couldn't keep up with the other students. Even Daniel, who weighed 2,000 pounds, was running faster than her. Evelyn mentally cheered herself on, keeping her breathing even. As it got longer and longer, the air was squeezed out of her chest in such large quantities that she just felt a dull ache in her chest cavity with every breath. 10 kilometers was really a bit of a challenge for her. As expected, by the halfway point, she couldn't run anymore and could only walk slowly. The other students, the fast ones, had already finished running, their faces not red and their hearts not jumping. Only she, the hair in front of her forehead was wet and pasted on both sides of her cheeks. The whole person looked like she was salvaged from the water because of sweating. One by one, the students finished the whole race. Everyone stared at Evelyn with excitement. I don't think she can run the whole course. No way, no matter what, she's still a legitimate candidate. It's just not right to be so weak. Want to make a bet? I bet 5 credits she can't finish. I bet 10. Everyone yelled in a chorus to make a bet. Daniel frowned, a little worried. He had already finished the whole run, unloaded the weighted gear on his body, and walked straight towards Evelyn to walk with her. Don't run if you can't run. Evelyn shook her head. Do you think I don't want to? She was also someone who had been through military training and knew that disobeying the instructor would only lead to a more severe chastisement. If he wants to punish, I'll take over for you. Junior, you're still too young. Just now you wanted to help me carry weights. Did he agree? With that devil instructor's character, I'm only afraid that both of them will be punished at the same time. Why bother? Although 10 kilometers was indeed a bit tiring, almost the limit of her physical strength, but with the demonic pills embedded in her body, she wasn't too worried. After walking and resting for a while, her lungs were finally less uncomfortable. Evelyn proceeded to run again. A long time later, finally completed the 10-kilometer punishment. With all her fussing, a good portion of the afternoon had passed. Andrew frowned and ordered everyone to move to the training room for class. Daniel carefully supported her. Is it all right? Why don't you just go on with your vacation? Evelyn took 2 deep breaths. No. If I take off today, there's still tomorrow and the day after. What will I do then? Daniel thought about it and could only give up the persuasion. The training room had a large amount of equipment, mainly to work on your students' psychic abilities. Before that, it was necessary to check to see the alien abilities of all the students. Andrew pulled out a round ball and had everyone's hands covered with it, and all sorts of assorted psychic abilities were detected. Soon it was her turn. Evelyn was dumbfounded. She didn't have any powers. Andrew made a stern face and walked up to her. What are you waiting for? Put your hands up. Under his instructions, Evelyn covered the sphere with her hands, and the internal energy in her body stirred madly. As if it had encountered some strong attraction, she hastily restrained that force. In the end, there was not the slightest difference in the testing sphere. Andrew's tongue topped the back of his grooved teeth. This is the first time since he practiced so much he encountered such a weak. Weight-bearing also can't work, and the supernatural ability is not there. He would be very curious. Why did you enroll in the combat department in the first place? Evelyn replied dryly. I like it better. She really couldn't make up a reason. Hell, I don't know what the original owner was thinking, running to such a military school and torturing herself. Andrew paused, but still had to say, you're just too weak. The combat department isn't suitable for you. It can even be said that the entire military school isn't suitable for you. He didn't finish the rest of his words, but his hidden expression revealed his true thoughts. Discouragement. Evelyn stopped talking. Do you think I want to stay here? Andrew knew she wouldn't listen to persuasion as soon as he took one look at her expression and could only take out other equipment for her to train on. They were all weightlifting and stamina building machines, similar to a gym. But the intensity was much higher than the gym. Evelyn gritted her teeth and insisted. If she didn't, where would she go if she got kicked out of school? It wasn't long before the end of class came. Evelyn walked towards the dormitory with heavy steps, as if she had lost her strength. Daniel took out a flying car from the space button. Come up. Thanks. Without continuing to show off, she followed and got into the car. Why did you enroll in the combat department? In the future, when you go to the battlefield, will you be able to beat the mutants with your physical strength? Daniel was curious. Evelyn pursed her lips. She also wanted to know why the original owner enrolled in the combat department. She couldn't bear it if she had to train like this every day in the future. Is it possible to change departments? Dropping out of school was not a consideration. It would be nice if she could transfer to an easier department. Daniel answered as he drove. Yes, it's possible, but you have to be in the top 3 in your major to apply. Evelyn, I don't know what kind of person came up with this rule. Isn't it just that you can't meet the requirements of your major, so you have to change departments? If you're in the top 3 of your major, why would you change departments? There were no more words along the way, and the dormitory had already been cleaned up by the robots after the morning fight. Evelyn couldn't stand being all sticky and greasy. I'm going to take a shower first. Daniel smiled and wrapped his arms around her neck. Let's wash together. Evelyn quickly waved her hand. No, no, no. You're still embarrassed? Daniel looked her up and down and turned to her. It's all male. I've got what you've got. So what's the point? Still shaking her head frantically in denial, Daniel fixed his eyes on her bottom area and realized he had discovered the truth. Do you have low self-esteem? Evelyn froze for a moment, reacting to what he was saying, and was busy turning her back to block his view. Uh-huh. Daniel was curious. Are you small? Let me see. I know a secret potion to make that thing bigger. She was too busy refusing, covering the spot. No, thank you kindly. Then fell away sharply. I'm not talking to you. I'm going in first. The design of the bathroom was simple. There were 2 round buttons on the wall. As soon as she pressed them, the water vapor covered her body as much as it could, dissipating moments after removing the stains, which was washed. High-tech was good, but it just didn't make it feel like a shower. Her body didn't go through the water, and she always felt unwashed. Unsatisfied, Evelyn changed her clothes and exited the bathroom as the other roommates returned. As soon as they saw her come out, Daniel roared into the bathroom. Everyone was discussing today's training in hushed tones, and aside from a few who had struck up a conversation, there were several other people in the dorm she didn't recognize. She silently got into bed and wrapped her entire body in the covers, listening to everyone chat. I heard from the instructor that we're going to go to field training in a few days, and we might encounter some low-level mutant species then. I heard that this field combat will be ranked by groups, and the top 3 will be rewarded with credits. Seems like it's a free group. 8 people to a battle team. Tisk, other dorms are fine, but our dorm has such a weak person. Can we win? The person who said this was a muscle-bound man and Evelyn's roommate, seemingly named Kevin, who gave her a veiled glance. The others didn't fall in line. They were all thinking about how to win this competition. Evelyn didn't dare say anything either. After all, there is no bottom. Be disliked by everyone, also know to hold back, alas. Her upper bunk is a handsome man with long silver hair. He is cold and ice-cold all over the body with an uninviting attitude. Change the bed, he ordered Evelyn, leaning against the bed frame. Evelyn's head was buried in the quilt, only revealing a pair of round almond eyes. No, thanks. I'm not negotiating with you. Compared to the top bunk, the bottom bunk was indeed more convenient, but unfortunately the beds were all randomly assigned. He glanced at her indifferently. Fight. If I win, the lower bunk goes to me. The other housemates all looked over at the words. Samuel was the one who watched the fun. Fine, I'll be the referee for you guys. Kevin laughed out loud. Then be gentle, don't kill anyone. Robert frowned. Everyone saw during today's training. She was so weak. Even running at 10 kilometers took half her life. How could she beat Richard? He couldn't stand to see him bullying. She's too weak. I'll fight you for her. Evelyn saw this and busily said, Forget it, forget it. I don't like sleeping on the bottom bunk. Let you have it. Samuel shook his head and spat. Tisk, TSK, TSK, the guts are also too small. Robert stared at her seriously and spoke. You don't have to force yourself. The beds are all randomly assigned. No one can force you if you don't want to change. Richard grimaced. According to the rules of the academy, I challenged her, and she can't refuse. After all, it was the combat department, where everything was about combat, so it was reasonably allowed for students to challenge each other to fight in private. Evelyn was busy sitting up. Don't. I'll switch with you, all right. Come to think of it, sleeping on the top bunk is also quite good. It's just inconvenient to get in and out of bed, but the privacy on top is much better than the bottom bunk. She neatly packed up her own bedding and wanted to throw it up, but unfortunately her height was too short and the bed frame was too high to put it up. Daniel had already showered and come out. What's this about? I'm switching to the top bunk, Evelyn explained in a whisper. With a twinkle in his eye, he guessed by the look on Richard's face that it must not have been of her own free will. After a day together, Daniel felt that Evelyn was weak everywhere, and his whole body was a little hot when he thought of accidentally hugging her at noon. Couldn't help but want to be a little closer to her. He didn't feel that he had a problem with his sexual orientation. It's all Evelyn's fault. There's nothing wrong with being born so soft. making people look at her and unconsciously want to bully her. But Richard's bed was right next to his upper bunk. So Daniel didn't fight for Evelyn and threw her things on the top bunk in 3 or 2 tries. Only the distance from the lower bunk to the upper bunk did not have a ladder. Everyone is in good physical condition, so they just jumped up. But she can't. That's several meters of bed. How is she going to jump up? Hey, at this moment also cannot find a ladder. Evelyn can only try to use the inner strength, lifting up 2 feet, wobbling on the bed. Luckily it worked, or else she would lose face again. When she used her inner strength, everyone in the dormitory noticed the difference. Holding their breath, they watched as she slowly got on the bed. Richard abruptly got up and knocked on her bedboard. You're a purifier? He could definitely not feel wrong as he had been purified before, and that warm energy was something he would never forget in his life. William nodded in agreement. Yes, that's the energy of purification. Why do you have this ability? Samuel froze. But isn't purification only awakened in females? 3 questions in a row and Evelyn's heart dropped. Crap, could someone explain to her why internal energy was the same as purification energy? Everyone looked at her, waiting for an explanation. Evelyn said dryly, I'm not. You guys are feeling it wrong. I should have known that she would never use her inner strength. This was not digging a hole for herself to jump into. The crowd had different thoughts, thinking of her so weak body, and that small body that was much shorter than a man. But isn't it just a normal woman's height? Daniel was the first to react, jumping right into her bed. You're a woman, aren't you? He made a scene and tried to peel off her pants. Evelyn dodged in a hurry. She panicked. No. Daniel didn't believe it and went up and down at the soft touch of her breasts. He froze. What's not to understand? What man has soft pecs? Evelyn covered her body with both hands, covering the top, but not the bottom. Everyone in the dormitory gathered around her bed. Looking at this situation, they were all waiting to strip her clothes to confirm. Evelyn deflated and hid her whole body under the quilt. Yes, you guys are all right. I am indeed a girl. Sorry for lying to you guys. Seeing her admit it herself, everyone blushed. Thinking of sleeping in the same room with her for the past few days, everyone gasped. Daniel was even worse, having flung his own bird around in front of her, his cheeks flushed as he dug Evelyn out from under the covers. Why did you hide your identity to come to the Federation Military Academy? Evelyn grimaced. If only she knew why. But damn it, she didn't know herself. Richard, what family are you from? Is your family comfortable letting you come out alone? He thought it was unbelievable. Purification masters were extremely precious. Whose family was so big-hearted to let a noble purification master come to this wolf's den alone? Evelyn covered her head and said sullenly, if I say that I'm suffering from memory loss, do you guys believe me? Crowd, I really won't lie to you guys. I woke up here, and I don't know myself what I am or where I came from. William lifted his glasses. Don't talk about this. I have a medical warehouse here. You've exercised too much today. I don't know if you'll hurt your body. Check it first. Daniel busily followed. Yes, it's necessary to check and see. In full view of everyone, Evelyn laid down into the medical warehouse, and after some checkups, it was just a simple case of overexercise. The medical bin only took a few minutes to treat her, and the soreness of her muscles from overexercising disappeared in a flash. Daniel eyed everyone for a second. No one can say anything about what happened today, or don't blame me. Samuel spat. I don't need you to tell us. We're not stupid. Suddenly remembering something, he asked Evelyn with a red face, how old are you? 19. Everyone unanimously aggravated their breathing. 1 year short of her choosing a husband. I wondered if they had a chance. Richard wondered, don't you have an escort? Evelyn shook her head. I don't remember. Samuel was busy. That means no. It's okay. I'll protect you later. Whether or not there was one, it was better that there wasn't one, so he could be near the water. Daniel pushed him away. Don't need you. I'm enough. Robert boarded up and joined in the fight for the spot to protect her. It was tentatively settled that everyone in the dormitory would be Evelyn's escort for now, privately of course, and all of them harbored small thoughts of not wanting to report her to the Federation. Robert also agreed with this disposition, but there were many other problems. What about her daily training in the future? Your daughter's body is delicate and can't withstand the drills. We'll take turns to finish it for her. Kevin hammered out. Everyone agreed with this idea. Robert continued. Don't forget that there will be field training in a few days, when there will be a lot of crises outside and mutant species. Can we protect her? Everyone was silent for a moment. Richard said, the field training is supposed to be for us freshmen. It shouldn't be too difficult. After all, those who can enter the military academy are the best in the Federation, and the school won't let us get into danger. Daniel chimed in. That's right. I wouldn't let her get hurt if I put my life on the line. The others nodded heavily. Evelyn was kinda touched as she watched everyone discuss where she was going. After only spending 1 day together, She didn't expect to be willing to put her life on the line to protect her. Although this protection also all had their own selfishness, it was also worthy of admiration. "Why don't I take my leave and not go?" she proposed. Just by hearing the words field training, she knew that it would not be that easy, and if she went, she would not only drag everyone down, but also be a burden. Besides, they had talked about it before. The top 3 places were rewarded with credits. If she didn't go, although there was one less person, it should be much easier than bringing her. William directly rejected the proposal. "No. If we all go, you'll be in danger if you're found alone in the military school. Although the security of the Federation is very good, it's unavoidable that there are some outlaws and perverts lurking inside the school. And there's another person in the dormitory who's late in reporting for duty. How are you going to hide if he happens to be here when we're all gone?" Richard added. Evelyn scanned the room and nodded. Herself, Daniel, William, Robert, Samuel, Richard, Kevin. A dormitory of 8, indeed one short. Sighing. "All right, then, I'll trouble you guys." Samuel smiled and showed his 8 teeth. "No trouble, just prioritize me when you pick a date in the future." Robert slammed him out of the way. "Fuck off." Daniel Baba looked at Evelyn, not moving to give her eye candy. "They are all so nice to you because you're a girl, but I've been nice to you since I didn't know. You have to prioritize me." Richard sneered. "Yeah, who knows if you're gay enough to flirt with guys." Daniel raged. "You." For a moment the air fills with silent smoke. Evelyn breaks the stalemate. She still has some questions. Internal power is the same as purification ability. Doesn't that mean she is also a purifier? She patted Daniel on the shoulder to reassure him. "What's your radiation level up to?" Daniel froze for a moment and answered, 60%. "Let me try." Her hand covered Daniel's wrist joint in a position that was like taking his pulse. Closing her eyes and letting her inner energy swim through him, Daniel's body was filled with dense black dots. Evelyn didn't know what they were, but just had a gut feeling it wasn't good. She maneuvered the clean white inner energy to surge into his body. As soon as it touched the blackened dots in his body, the white light spontaneously devoured the black dots. 10 minutes passed, and all the black spots were all cleaned up by her. Daniel checked in a daze that the radiation level in his body was approaching 0. The others were also quick to notice the change. Samuel was shocked, too. Too strong. Knowing that the noble women could at most purify 10% of the radiation value at a time, no one had ever been able to purify all of it at once. Richard hid the surprise in his eyes. "How many ranks are you? How many levels?" "There are levels in this." Evelyn wondered. Seeing her face full of innocence, she really didn't look like she was pretending. Daniel explained, "Purifiers are divided into 1st to 9th rank. The higher up the rank, the stronger. Even the strongest purifiers are not able to purify all the radiation at once." Evelyn is surprised. "Does that mean that she is not normally strong now?" Richard added. "And a 9th rank purifier will be mentally and physically exhausted once they purify more than 50% or more of the radiation, and will have to rest for a month to slow down." The rarity of noble women was by no means empty. It was because of the physical reason. The purification ability is not like water can be endless, but need time buffer. The highest rank can only purify 3 people a day, and the degree of purification cannot exceed 50%. William sighed. With an ability like hers, if the Federation knew about it. Evelyn yawned. "Let's talk about it tomorrow. I want to sleep." Everyone silently stopped talking. It was only in the allocation of beds that everyone complained again. "Why don't you sleep with me? I'll guard her 24 hours a day." What a beautiful thought, you. A mere ice-type psychic ability dares to make a big deal about protecting Evelyn. Or let me do it. I can use my ability to isolate a steel plate. All-round and deathless protection. Don't even argue. The weather is a bit cooler now. I'm a fire-type ability. I'll sleep with her in my arms in case Evelyn catches a cold and catches a cold. William watched the group argue and lowered his eyes. Woman, purifier. To actually show up in their dormitory, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Evelyn was so sleepy that she hid under the covers and listened to the noise and drifted off to sleep. Daniel noticed this way and made a gesture, and everyone lowered their voices. A good night's sleep was had. The next day no one chose to go first, and one by one they all sat steady, waiting for her to wash up and go to class together. Evelyn was too embarrassed to keep everyone waiting. She was the one who had gotten up late in the first place, and after washing her face and brushing her teeth as fast as she could in her life. "Let's go." Everyone stood up all together, close to 2 meters tall, sandwiched inside her 1.6 meters. She was sweating a bit. A group of people walked towards the place where the class was held in great numbers. Daniel inquired with concern, "Are you tired? Should I drive you?" Evelyn looked around. There aren't many people driving on campus. It's too eye-catching. It's fine. It's not far. Robert warily surveyed the surrounding. A group of people escorted her in the center. "Evelyn, it's getting hard to see the road. Isn't it obvious that there's something wrong with me?" Luckily, she didn't run into any of her classmates along the way, except for the students who brushed past her and looked this way twice in confusion. This morning's class doesn't need to train, it's a theoretical study. Just as soon as I sat down, Samuel then pulled out bread and milk from the space knob. Here, have some breakfast. Richard's face fell a little. Why didn't he think of this? Evelyn said thanks and took it in small bites. The group of people watched her little cherry mouth biting into the fluffy bread, sucking on a mouthful of milk every now and then. Their eyes straightened up, only wishing that the one biting and sucking was themselves. Evelyn swallowed the food in her mouth and said uncomfortably, "Stop it. Why are you all staring at me?" "It's creepy, okay?" She wasn't calm enough to eat under so many pairs of eyes. Daniel clenched his hand into a fist and put it to his mouth and coughed lightly. "Stop staring, all of you. Class is about to start." The words fell as the teacher stepped into the classroom. With no one watching, she settled her breakfast in 3 or 2 bites. The morning's lesson was the ability to survive in the wilderness and the analysis of the characteristics of mutant species. Evelyn listened drowsily. No matter what era she was in, she didn't love learning. Although a few men were staring at the teacher on the top with their normal faces, the rest of their eyes were on Evelyn, seeing her head little by little, about to knock on the table. Richard hurriedly caught it and placed it on his shoulder. Shit, why was he a step behind him? "Evelyn, you answer." Hearing the roll call, Richard was busy waking her up, his eyes signaling above. Evelyn stood up with a jolt, and the few men next to her weren't paying attention and didn't know the answers. It was William who snuck her a slip of paper, and following it, she stumbled through the answers. The teacher's face eased up a lot. "Sit down and listen carefully." Evelyn bit her lip and nervously sat down. Alas, it was too hard. How could she not wear a better world? Lessons and all, she really didn't want to. The morning's lesson ended quickly. "Kevin, when did your dorm become so united? You have to sit together in class." A classmate inquired curiously. Kevin impatiently explained. "If you want to be together, you're together. It's up to you." The Long family is a noble of the Federation, and that person still wanted to use this opportunity to get on good terms with him. Seeing this, he snapped and replied, No, I'm just talking off the top of my head." Everyone surrounded Evelyn and left again. A man with a bratty face in the classroom revealed a playful smile. A table in the cafeteria sat just 8 people, and the 7 of them were firmly seated. Ever since they found out she was a girl, these people protected her like nothing else, not letting her do anything for fear of her hurting herself. Even washing up in the morning, Daniel wanted to help. If not for her strict refusal, she would really look like a loser herself. Samuel goes to get his food with Robert stinking up the place, looking at the food categorized overhead. "Robert, 1 high-level meal, 6 low-level meals." Samuel's eyes widened. "We're just going to eat the low-level set meal, huh? Then what else do you want to eat? It's good enough to have something to eat. You're not a woman. What's the point of eating so well?" Zach in the next window laughed covertly. So the little body they were escorting was a woman? That explained it. And he bought himself a fancy set meal, served it with a schmooze, and walked over to Evelyn's table and sat down. The others looked at him with displeasure. "Who are you? Can't you see there's people here? There are 8 people at a table. If I remember correctly, there are only 7 of you, right?" With this aggressive look, the other few were immediately on guard. Zach kept his head down and ate in silence, only occasionally looking at Evelyn with amusement in his eyes. It was a good thing he ate quickly, finishing his meal in a few minutes and giving Evelyn a deep look before he left. She sweated. Those eyes seemed to see through everything. The meal on her plate, it still didn't taste great. The radiation levels were so high, she missed the last world a little.